What's up, everyone? It's Josh with Joushi Howard here, and we just had the World Championships of Warhammer lists and pods released earlier today. I was planning to play Rogue Trader all day today, but unfortunately, I guess I have to make some videos about it. I have 12 lists of different guard players to show you guys throughout the day, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about where we might expect things to go from here. So to start off with, like I said, we have 12 players coming to this event overall, coming from throughout the world. The first one that we have is Chris Johnson coming from the United States, and Chris is bringing something very unusual because he's bringing the Siege Regiment, not an army that you tend to see very often competitively. It shows up every now and then, but it's not really something that a lot of people are expecting to be making waves in the current metagame. Anyway, to go over the list, it is the Cadian Command Squad with Eager Advance, that gives the whole unit Scout. Gaunt's goes a Krieg Command Squad with Stalwart's Honors, that's the one that gives everything take cover if it has another order. Another Krieg Command Squad, 2 Rogel Throne Commanders, Sly Marbo, Ursula Creed, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 20 Krieg, 1 unit of an artillery team with the multiple rocket launcher, 2 units of Ketachan mortars, 2 field ordnance batteries, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, and overall, I think this is a really interesting list. One of the couple things about Chris that I have noticed, Chris doesn't have a lot of history of guard this edition. He's been playing a lot of other things, and it's not a name that I remember ever seeing make the spreadsheet. So it is a little bit surprising that we have somebody who is not necessarily a guard main playing guard right now. We actually have fewer players who are like guard mains going to Worlds this year that are off guard than I expected, but I was really not expecting anyone who is not already a known guard player or who has mostly guard in their history to be playing it, and Chris is bringing something that's really interesting. The big thing, obviously, is this is a lot of points being spent on indirect. You have an artillery team, so it's 95 plus 65, 65. So we're looking at like 250, and then 2 field endurance batteries. That's basically another 200. So that's almost like 500, somewhere between like 450 and 500 points of indirect in a list, which is odd. I think you guys know my opinions on indirect right now in general. It's not very good unless you have a specific meta read, and I think Chris is onto something a little bit here. The big thing, one of the big armies that we are needing to deal with in the current metagame is Eldar, and while I think this is going to struggle against a lot of armies because there's not as much damage 3 coming out of this. It's not the siege cannon, the multiple rocket launcher, I believe is damage 1 or 2. You don't have a lot of damage 3, so some of the things that are going to be a lot of 3 wounds or a lot of vehicles, I do see this kind of struggling into, and there are definitely plenty of players bringing a lot of vehicles. However, it does seem reasonably well positioned to deal with things like Raven Guard and Eldar because of the amount of damage to indirect that you are putting out, so it doesn't really matter where they are, you are going to be getting to them. A couple other interesting thoughts on this one is the 10 Cadians with Eager Advance feels like a really interesting decision to be making here because you do have the opportunity to like sticky your home, but only some maps can you actually use the Eager Advance to actually scout onto objectives, like on Search and Destroy and Tipping Point. You can both get into the middle objective. I believe there's 1 or 2 where you can touch your natural with a 6-inch scout, but I don't know off the top of my head because it hasn't come up very often. Regardless, though, it is a really interesting perspective coming into this event. It is going to have some really good matchups, but it also is going to have some really miserable matchups. It's going to really struggle to crack open transports. It's going to really struggle to deal with anything heavier like knights or like tank spam, but if this comes through and ruins a Raven Guard player's day because you killed like 7 Van Vets out of the rapid ingress or something like that, then I think it's still going to have some success. I can see this doing reasonably well if Chris can keep up with the level of skill that is actually going to be at the event. Chris is in Pool 6, and a couple notable names. I'm going to be doing this for all of them. These are not necessarily the only good players. It is the World Championships after all, so you should expect that the majority of players there are very strong. But these are a couple names that stuck out to me for all the pools. Derek Apshe, John Lennon, and Wesley St. Hines are all, I believe they're all like top 30 ELO players, maybe even like top 20. They're all very strong players, all in Pool 6. So that one is going to be very interesting to see how the pairings end up going. Next, we're going to be going over David Purcell, a well-known contributor to the channel, and also someone I talk to all the time. David coming in for, I believe he did not make the World Championships last year, or maybe he wasn't able to go. Don't know exactly what happened there, but David is playing Combined Arms. He's also coming from the United States, and he's an 1800 plus ELO player. He doesn't really believe in ELOs. He's been screwing around with the ELO a fair amount, and he might be playing under a pseudonym at this event. We will find out. Anyway, David, a couple of things that he told me before the list went live were, one, he was planning to just try and shoot a bunch of Europeans who are used to playing on WTC boards, and also one of my favorite quotes that I've ever heard from David is, I think this list is a few rushes short before I'd really call it spam. David's list, he's got a Cadian Command Squad with the Death Mask, Rogaldorn Commander with Grand Strategist, Ursula Creed, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Krieg, 1 unit of Krieg Flamers, 1 unit of Aquilons, a Hellhound, 2 Luminous Battle Tanks, 1 Luminous Exterminator with Plasma, the rest of them have Meltas, 3 Luminous Vanquishers, and 1 Scout Sentinel. And this is just a lot of firepower. This is fairly similar to a list that we've seen David play in previous data slates. I believe he said it was almost exactly, maybe exactly the list he was playing in April, but minus an entire Taurox since then. So it's a lot of output. It's just got a lot of tanks, and one of the big things is you aren't as reliant on tank orders with this kind of army, because a lot of the expectation is when you really need your whole army to be hitting on threes, it's not that hard to do it. You are going to be having to commit a couple of command points when you use Ursula Creed to use the flexible command. So it does have a lot of damage. And I believe the Krieg Flamers and the Aquilons, I believe the Krieg Flamers here are partly a tech piece in trying to deal with AdMech right now because, 3d6 at 512 ignores cover torrent does mean that you are going to kill a fair number of, like, Sicarian Infiltrators or Taraxi Skystalkers, anything that relies on using stealth and a weird invul to stay alive. Having only AP1 and auto hitting does mean that you are going to be killing a lot of them. He's going to be able to go toe-to-toe with basically anyone's gun line with this kind of army. It's just a lot of damage. He still has the 20 Krieg to be annoying on your natural. We'll see how he does. David is going to be in Pool 8. A couple notable players in that are, of course, Folger Piles and John Winter Russell. Folger, the winner of last year's WCW, and John Winter Russell, of course, making top 4. I can never remember if it's 3rd or 4th, but he definitely made top 4 last year. So a lot of strong players coming into this pool as well. And David, I think, is one of the players. If you are just watching or just tuning into this WCW, I think David is one of the guard players to be watching at this event. Next, we have Fabiano Mariani playing Hammer the Emperor, coming in from Italy. Now, one of the interesting things about I did a little bit of research into as many of the players as I could before I actually made this video, given how little time I had. Fabiano, almost all of his events in the ITC this year were at things called the Ludic World Championship Series. So it looks to be like a qualifier event in order to try and go to Worlds. But one of the big reasons why these didn't catch my nose previously is they're mostly 3-round events, and they're mostly like 20-ish players. So it's really hard to get a good understanding of how strong of a player Fabiano is, partly because I'm not super familiar with the Italian metagame, and also just because if you don't have an ELO, if you're not going to like bigger events, it's really hard to see how often you're going to be doing well against stronger players, simply because you're going to be playing them. Not to say these Ludic World Championship Series events are not strong, I just don't recognize a lot of the players, so it's hard for me to gauge how strong Fabiano is. With that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the Hammer of the Emperor list that he brought. He has Gaunt's Ghosts, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, one of them with the Indomitable Steed enhancement, meaning that it has the 6-up Feel No Pain, 2 Tauroxes, 2 units of Kazarkin, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Rattlings, 1 Basilisk, 1 Hellhound, 1 Luminous Vanquisher, 1 Rogaldorn Battle Tank, and 2 Scout Sentinels. So this is very similar to a list that Patrick Greatbatch, who's been having a lot of success up in Canada, one of the players who is like tied for like the most ever appearances on the spreadsheet in one data slate, has been running. You still have 3 Rogaldorns, a couple more tanks, But the interesting pieces here are, of course, the two Kazarkin and Toroxes in Hammer because they give you a little bit more opportunity to be aggressive and hunt things behind walls. And the other big one here is the Basilisk. So one of the big changes that you see in this list is it is one of the few guard lists that is not running any Cadians in order to stick your home field. Instead, it is going to be using that Basilisk. So it's not going to be quite as easy to screen for Fabiano, which will make it a little bit more susceptible to things like what do you call it? Raven Guard Shadow Mark, or other things that have like 6-inch deep strike. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for Fabiano to protect his home field because he's going to have to use more strong or more impactful activations to hang back a little bit more on the board and not be as aggressive in some of those matchups. So we'll see how well it actually does. Fabiano is playing in Pool 3. A couple names that I recognized here. Cipian Wang coming out from China, Mike Muzzeni, and Walter Langendorf. I believe Mike is Art of War, or at least I've heard his name pop up on Art of War quite a bit, and Walter Langendorf, one of the big pioneers of Awakened Dynasty Necron. So good luck to Fabiano in Pool 3, and we'll see how he does. Another player coming through, we have Hussein A coming in from Malaysia, and I did not find an elo for Hussein, so probably not as many big events that he's gone to in the past. Otherwise, playing under a different name at some of these events, I was not able to find. I did ask one of my friends from the area about the two Malaysian guard players who are going, and Hussein being one of them. Has my friend had to say is not someone that he's used to seeing in the later rounds. It tends to be someone that he plays in the earlier rounds when they do end up playing. So we'll see how Hussein does. Not necessarily, we don't have a lot of info on how much of a threat they're going to be at this event. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the Hammer of the Emperor list that they're bringing. It is very different than a lot of other Hammer lists. It is a Cadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, one Rogaldorn Commander, one Enginseer, 2 units of 10 Cadians, 2 Toroxes, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of Krieg Flamers, 1 Hellhound, 2 Rogaldorn Battle Tanks, and 1 Scout Sentinel. So the really interesting thing about this list is, of course, that it does have Lord Solar in it. And one of the adaptations that we have been seeing, I'm not super sold on it, but it is something that you see from time to time, is taking Lord Solar instead of Rogaldorn Commanders does mean you can save a couple of points on the Rogaldorn Commanders for the Rogaldorn Battle Tanks, which have the blank. And most of the time, this isn't really savings because you're spending so many points on Lord Solar that you're not actually like saving anything, but you do have a slightly better CP economy by including the Lord Solar. The other big thing about it is with the prevalence of Admech, who has a ton of las cannon and like las cannon equivalent style weapons, it is having those blanks is kind of nice, but I do really wonder if we had just dropped the Lord Solar and maybe the Enginseer and just taken an entire another tank, if it would not have accomplished the same thing in terms of what you're actually trying to do, right? If we just drop like Lord Solar and a little bit more in order to just get another Rogaldorn Commander with the Calm Under Fire enhancement, I think it maybe could have been a little bit stronger. Anyway, Hussein is playing in Pool 8, Folger Piles, John Winter Russell. We'll see how Hussein actually does at this event. It is, like I said, a very strong pool, and we'll have to see how well his adaptations to the meta have actually worked out. Another player, another really big heavy hitter coming to this event is Gustavo Jose Barranco Varandas de Sousa, representing Portugal but playing in the UK these days. 1854 ELO rated player, so very strong. Recently said that they were going to Coventry and then lied about it and didn't actually go to Coventry. And we can't say anything nice about him or his ego will get even bigger than it already is. And I don't think that's healthy for anyone. It is a very different list than what we've been seeing from a lot of players, but it has been inspiring some other people. And I would not be surprised if this is something where you see a little bit more net list. I still need to give it a little bit more of a try. I unfortunately do not have the models for it, and so I have not been playing it a ton. Or actually, I have not played any lists or any games with this style of list since Gustavo started talking about it. So we'll see how it goes. The list is 2 Cadian Castellans, 2 Cadian Command Squads, 1 Catachan Command Squad, and every single command squad is given an Ogren Bodyguard. Unfortunately, he lied to us and is not bringing Nork Deadog like he's been pushing for a while. It also has 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 2 units of 20 Cadians, 3 units of 10 Catachan, 3 Chimeras, and then 3 units of Khazarkin. So it is just very much an army that brawls for the middle of the board really heavily. A couple of the big things here are, one, Cadian Castellans, one of them typically starting on the board, the other one typically starting in reserves based on my discussions I've had with him, and you can use it to rapid ingress, threaten to heroic, threaten to overwatch, especially against melee armies, and because you have the Cadian Castellan who gives the unit sustained, and you order them rapid fire when they come in, and you kit every single one of these units to the teeth with plasma guns, it's like, I want to say it's like 15-ish plasma shots coming out of a Cadian unit with sustained and lethal. So it actually does, like, it hurts, especially into marine shapes and marine type bodies. You're going to do a lot more damage than a lot of people are expecting. The other big thing about these 20 Cadians, if you can touch them on an objective, they are, of course, getting the benefit of cover. And as we've talked about, it is not trivial to remove 20 bodies of anything in the game right now. And 20 Cadians in cover because of the Cadian command squad or with the take cover order suddenly are very difficult to remove. And the other thing is there's like it's like a Russian nesting doll, right? Where after you kill the 20 Cadians off, and then the Castellan, who doesn't really do anything without the Cadians, you still have a command squad and Ogre and bodyguard just like waiting inside the unit. And we've talked before about how difficult that unit is to remove. So it's a really interesting style. One of the big things about this is it's just a lot of stuff. It's a lot of brawling for the midboard. And depending on what the maps and missions look like at WCW, this could either be caught really in the open up against some very strong gun lines, which could be problematic, or it could just absolutely tear people apart because he's able to actually move these pieces into positions that he needs to. So Gustavo, one of the heavy hitters for guard, is in pool 15. A couple notable members here, of course, Jeremy Atkinson from StatCheck and Michael Mann from Art of War going in there, and we'll see how Gustavo does. I do think Gustavo is in a good position based on my very brief looks at the pools to actually try and make it out of pools with all the wins. And I don't know if I would put Gustavo as a favorite to win the whole event, but I do think he is very likely to do very well. Next, we have Jesus Santillan coming from Mexico. Not the highest rated player at the event, and one of the big things is I had one of my followers, Zaid, coming in from Mexico saying he's played against Jesus before, but is not necessarily sure how effective he's going to be at this event due to the caliber of players that we are seeing at the World Championships. But let's take a look at Jesus' list. It is a Cadian command squad with Grand Strategist, 2 Rogaldorn commanders, Gaunt's Ghost, Ursula Creed, and 1 Engine Seer, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Catachan, 1 unit of 20 Krieg, 2 Toraxes with I'm assuming each of them having 10 Krieg Engineers inside, 1 unit of Aquilons, 2 units of 5 Death Riders, 1 Hellhound, and 1 Leman Russ Exterminator. The big thing that jumps out to me immediately looking at this is the decision to take Engineers instead of Khazarkin. I'm not super sold on Engineers now that the remote mine is nowhere near as strong as it used to be, and they just don't do as much damage as Khazarkin would because they don't have the plasma, they don't have the melt-guns. They're not going to nearly as consistently actually kill a unit of 5 Scout Marines. So it's mostly going to be about OC denial on this. You still have a lot of things. You still have a decent mix of everything coming out. He still has the 20 Krieg, Death Corps of Krieg to just hang out in the natural. So you still got all of the fairly normal stuff. I do think if this was my list, I would probably just drop the Engine Seer and use the extra points to just change the Krieg Engineers to Khazarkin, but we'll see how Jesus actually does. Jesus is in pool 7 with Tony Barrett and Jack Harpster from Art of War. Yeah. And Jesus, a fairly new player I'm not as used to seeing. I don't believe Jesus has made the spreadsheet before, but good luck to Jesus, and good luck to yeah, good luck to everyone there. Next, we have John Winter Russell. I'm a big John Winter Russell fan. I've been talking to him a lot about Mechanized Assault recently, but when I talked to him about it, he said, I don't think this is the time to try and style on people with a detachment that is probably not as good as combined, and he doesn't feel like he has the reps or the understanding of the mission pack necessary because they don't have a mission pack to actually necessarily play Mechanized Assault for this event. John, of course, got top 4 at last year's World Championships of Warhammer, was a major scorer at Challengers Cup, and was a major player for Team Canada at WTC. So there's no reason to think that John is not going to do very well at this event. John is playing a Cadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Tempestuous Command Squads, 1 Roguethorn Commander with the Grand Strategist enhancement, Ursa Creed, 2 units of 10 Cadians, which is departure from what a lot of people go for. A lot of people like either 1 unit of 10 Cadians to just hang on the home, or maybe a 20 unit of Cadians to attach to Ursula Creed, or otherwise like play for the natural. By having the other unit of 10 Cadians, John tends to put like more things on his natural, just kind of bunched up on there than some other players would, and that's how he gets to stick you off. Or at least that's how he's attempting to stick you off a lot of the time. He's got 2 Tauruxes, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders as a rapid ingress threat, 3 units of Khazarkin, 2 units of 5 Scions, 1 Hellhound, 1 Luminous Battle Tank, and 2 Scout Sentinels. So it is much more finesse focused with this list than what a lot of other guard lists are playing for. The Tempestuous Command Squads and the Rough Riders can go in different places. You try and get them to either attack things from rapid ingress, or you can drop one of them later to just shoot at something. But the the Rough Riders and the Tempestuous Scions, they do create a lot of rapid ingress threat that your opponent does have to respect, and it's still just a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have the gun line in order to get into shootouts with things like AdMech right now, but because it has so many things, it is maybe a little bit better positioned to deal with something like Eldar, who are going to be trading down into a lot of these smaller pieces that John is taking relative to some of the other guard players who are going to this event. He is also playing in Pool 8, so I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to Folger Piles once again and David Purcell, who are in the same pool. John, like we said, one of the strongest guard players at the event, arguably one of the strongest players at the entire event. So I'm expecting John to do very well, and he's probably going to go toe-to-toe with Folger to go undefeated out of the pool. Next, we have Jolan Alex, a player that we actually had on this channel a long time ago, also known as Aranwi, coming in from France. And France, of course, is a country that focuses a lot more on teams 40k than they do on singles 40k. So the fact that Jolan is still above 1600 is very impressive in general. Jolan is playing a combined list that doesn't have a whole lot of super new stuff coming out about it, but that's because it's already strong. You have the Cadian Castellan with the Cadian Command Squad, 2 Roguethorn Commanders, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, and this is with the Cadian Castellan and the Cadian Command Squad. You can start this on the board to go try and sticky your natural, or you can start it off the board just like we see with Gustavo. The Cadians are going to hang out in your home objective. You have 1 unit of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, and 1 Taurus. This is my favored transport loadout if you're running a bunch of Khazarkin, but with only 2 units of Khazarkin in the list, I'm expecting the Catachan probably go in the Taurus, and it's just 1 turn of OC denial in that list. He's got 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, 2 units of Khazarkin, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, a Scout Sentinel, and a Calidus Assassin. Bit of an interesting decision right now because of how cheap Gaunt's Ghost has become. It was a unit that was 110 for a long time and is now 100. I believe a Calidus is the same. But instead of having all the little extra tools that Gaunt's Ghost have with the Lone Up Stealth, Benefit of Cover, Fights First, Ranged Precision, or like Damage 4, Ranged Precision, random dev wounds on McColl's knife. The Calidus Assassin bringing in the Vect does a lot of the same up-down, but doesn't have the same kind of screening capability, so it's really going to be a challenge for Jolan to actually get the Calidus to be useful in all of the games. A lot of very normal stuff. It is the classic double Dorn and 12 Bulgrin that we saw a lot at WTC. But the big change here is instead of the extra Khazarkin, the extra Catachan, and the extra just running things into the midboard, it has been replaced by the Cadian Castellan brick that has become a little bit more popular. Jolan is playing in Pool 11. A couple notable players there, of course, Mark Hertel of the Running 3 Land Raiders fame, and Roger Boyra, one of the top players from Spain. Next, we have Marshall Peterson. Yes, it is the same Marshall Peterson that has had some controversies about their play in the past. But I haven't been hearing, like, I haven't heard issues with him really since that Tacoma Open. So we'll see. Hopefully it is going to continue being on the up and up for Marshall. Marshall has been a strong player for a while. He's been messing around with mechanized assault for a while as well, and he's also the player who's playing, what was it, Maximum Rough Riders, Maximum Death Core Riders, or whatever they were called in the index before we got our codex, and running a bunch of science there. This is probably the most obvious I'm here for fun style list at the World Championships of Warhammer for the Guard. It is one Caden Caston with the leadership enhancement. I believe that's the sticky one. 3 units of Tempestus Command Squads, 3 Toroxes, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of Kazarkin, 1 unit of Creed Flamers, 1 unit of 6 Ogren, 2 units of 10 Rattlings, 3 units of 5 Scions, and you're probably looking at this and going, that's not a lot of transports for a lot of things that want to go in transports. And don't worry, friends, it's because he runs it out with a Stormlord. You heard that right, a Stormlord Super Heavy. This is the one that has the Vulcan Mega Bolter on top, but it also picks something up after it jumps out in order to hop back in. And one of the strategies, I'm not saying it's a good strategy, but it's a strategy that you can do, is you hop out the Ogren, you hop out the Rattlings from the Stormlord, Rattlings shoot, hop back into the Stormlord. Other Rattlings shoot, hop back into the Stormlord. Ogren, hop out, shoot, and then in your opponent's, I believe it's end of the movement phase, you hop back into the Stormlord. So they now have to kill the Stormlord. The thing that worries me about this list, one, is it's a lot of points put into Super Heavy. 2, there's no engines here, so the Super Heavy isn't actually doing that much damage on its own, and with no Lord Solar, it's always hitting on 4s at best. So it's an interesting list coming through. I'd be curious to see how Marshall actually does. He is a strong player, but this doesn't have a lot of the tools to play like normal 40k. You don't have anything that is very obviously wanting to stand on your home objective. You don't have anything that is super obviously wanting to stand on your natural. So it's going to be a lot of pressure coming out from the Stormlord. But if you play into like the Admech or the Eldar, who just rock up with Fire Dragons and just kill 400 points of your army in one activation, I could see this going very poorly very quickly. Anyway, Marshall is playing in Pool 5 with Alex McDougall, one of the strongest Canadian players, Colin Watts, I believe in the UK, and then Evan Stump, another player who wishes they had more time to do all the international events. But anyway, good luck to Marshall, and hopefully the Super Heavy serves you well. Next, we have another common contributor to the channel, Nick Gigiello from in Canada, another 1800 rated player playing the same Hammer the Emperor list that we've been seeing him play for a little while. It is Gaunt's Ghost, 1 Rogaldorn Commander with the Calm Under Fire, the Grand Strategist enhancement, another Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Rattlings. 5, 5, 5, 5. And then the rest of it is vehicles. We have 2 Hellhounds, 1 Leman-Russ Exterminator, 3 Leman-Russ Vanquishers, and 3 Scout Sentinels. So it's a very violent list. It's a list where you kill your opponent first, and then you try and score a little bit later in the game. And it's really fast. One of the interesting things about this list is, of course, because it has so much firepower, it is very difficult for a lot of opponents' lists to actually fight back in the normal way. There are very few lists. I think like David Purcell's list is like one of the few lists that I would actually want to just get into a firefight with Nick with, just because the lethal hits coming from combined is a big difference maker in terms of how much damage David's list is going to be doing relative to Nick's. However, into most lists do not run enough anti-tank to get through the Hellhounds and then the Vanquishers and then the Rogaldorns, and it's just enough volume of bodies in tanks that Nick is going to be doing a lot of damage to people. He will run into a little bit of trouble with some armies that have too much durability, like if you were to run into something like Mark Hertel with the 3 Land Raiders. It could be an issue there. But a lot of the other lists just don't have the firepower to get through, so it is going to be much more of an OC game for a lot of his opponents because Nick's list does not have that much OC. He's going to be playing in Pool 4 with Ben Jurek from Art of War and Noah Pope, one of the consistent top performers, and I believe he was on Team USA this last year as well. But Nick, a very strong player coming from Canada, so good luck to him, and we'll see how well he actually does. He is in a tough pool, not necessarily because of the players. Of course, all the pools have good players, but because he is playing into a lot of armies that just have a ton of las cannons. I believe it was a lot of Eldar and a lot of Admech when I looked. Next, we have Wesley St. Hines. This is one of the few players at Worlds that I have on my shortlist to win the whole thing. And if you watch his LVO list, I believe it's identical to what he took to LVO. It's Gaunt's Ghost, Ursula Creed, Kading Castling, Kading Castling, Kading Castling, Kading Command Squad, Kading Command Squad, Kading Command Squad, 20 Cadians, 20 Cadians, 20 Cadians, 20 Cadians, 10 Catachan, 10 Catachan, 10 Krieg, 10 Krieg, 10 Krieg, 10 Krieg, 20 Krieg, 20 Krieg, 10 Rough Riders, 10 Rough Riders, Scout Sentinel. I don't know what more I can say about this that hasn't already been said in the 3 videos I've done with Wesley about Recon at this point. It's a lot of OC. It's very hard to kill for shooting armies. It's not as hard to kill for melee armies, but it's really hard to get into combat with for melee armies because the 6-inch reactive plus the -2 to charge is functionally -8. So even if you got an inch away, you're still looking at a 9. And realistically, you're generally not getting an inch away. You're generally getting like 4 inches away. And suddenly turning a 4-inch charge into a 10-inch charge is massive and ridiculous. So Wesley, of course, very strong player, playing something that not a lot of other people are prepared for, and I'm also really surprised that there were no other players at this event actually playing Recon. I think it's actually really well positioned for this event. It's a very strong player. So everybody else either just, I don't want to play because it hurts my back, or I don't want to paint that many models, or I don't think I have time to get good at this. I know there were a couple players who are like, I think I could do it. However, I do not have the time to get the reps in order to feel comfortable playing this at the event. Wesley is playing in Pool 6. Of course, Derek Apshe and John Lennon. A couple of other very, very strong players in the pool. So even though Wesley is one of those players that I think is likely, to make it out of the pool undefeated, he does have some other good players. He will have to beat some very strong players on his way there. We have one more player, Yusun Christopher Coe. I believe I found the ELO like 1536. However, it doesn't have the Yusun part of it, so I'm not 100% sure if that's the same player. I'm also told that Chris is a fan of the channel, so hello, Chris. Thank you for being a follower. Thank you for hanging out, and congratulations on making it to the World Championships. Chris is playing Combined Arms. He's got a Cadian Command Squad, 1 Gaunt's Ghost, 1 Rogaldorn Commander with Grand Strategist, a 2nd Rogaldorn Commander, Ursa Creed, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 2 Kazarkin, 3 Luminous Vanquishers, and 2 Scout Sentinels. There's not a lot new about this list that Chris is bringing to this event. However, if there's not much new, that means it's like tried and tested, right? This is definitely an army that we've seen variations of for months. I believe we've been seeing very consistent variations on this since June. The big thing here and the big change from some of those earlier lists is the unit of 20 Cadians as opposed to a unit of 20 Krieg that were a little bit more common at the time. But one of the things that we are seeing is needing to drop the Kazarkin unit here, or a 3rd Kazarkin unit, so it doesn't brawl for the midboard quite as well as some of the other lists that we have been seeing combined, but you still have the Rogel Thorns, you still have the Vanquishers, you can get into a lot of shootouts right now, and you still have the tools to play the midboard plenty effectively. So Chris has all the tools necessary to play a very honest, a very straightforward game of Warhammer, and it's a list that has had proven success in the past. So good luck to Chris. He is going to be in Pool 9. A couple of names there. Dan Salmons and Frank Viroet. Frank did recently appear on a match review where he was playing Chaos Knights up against Adrian Phillips from, oh gosh, which one was it? Tabletop Titans. I think they're Tabletop Titans. There's so many like tabletop YouTube channels. I can't remember all of them all the time. Anyway, Let's go ahead and talk about it for this event. A couple things about this event to think about in general. There are a ton of Eldar players, and there's way more AdMech players than there have basically ever been for any other like normal meta. So just kind of keep that in mind. A couple of other big things about this event is all of the lists were submitted before knowing the player pack. I'm not really a fan of that in general. I know a lot of other players have said that it is frustrating to not know the player pack beforehand, or before list submission, because sometimes you just find out, oh, I'm screwed because the missions don't work. Like my army doesn't work on certain missions that end up finding their way into the player pack. So it is one of those interesting things that we will see. Yeah, I think Guard is definitely an army that is not super well positioned for the general metagame. Um, However, one of the big things is good players can still make Guard work pretty well, and I think we have enough strong players. So the players I once again want to make sure, if you are just tuning in and you see them on stream, go ahead, shout them out, tell them I sent you. We have Wesley St. Hines on Recon, Nick Jagiello from Canada on Hammer of the Emperor, John Winter Russell also from Canada on a very low tank combined, Gustavo de Sousa from Portugal on another combined with Katie Castellans, and then the other one, David Purcell, with heavy tank. And I think it's really interesting actually, like going into this event, because we have all of the top players from the or are playing different things, right? We have heavy tank combined from David. We have medium tank, but the two Caden Castellan bricks coming out from Gustavo. John playing very low tanks and just midboard brawl in a very different way from Gustavo. We have Nick playing heavy tanks in Hammer, which of course just gives you different tools than what David Purcell is looking at. And then Wesley St. Hines is playing Recon. So the demise of Guard is definitely not there, but I do sympathize for a lot of people who are like not at this level and not able to consistently play and make a lot of these tools work, because they are very good, but they're getting harder and harder to use every single patch. Anyway, World is happening in about a week and a half, or a little bit more than a week. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you cheer on all of your favorite players. For now, though, thank you so much for tuning in for this breakdown of the Guard list at Worlds, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.